So continuing here, chapter 10 on religion. So he'll show the idea of double consciousness, how it permeates the religious culture of African American life. And he'll juxtapose this, basically preaching with the idea of teaching. So in chapter 3, he's making an argument for, education, um, and the teacher, right, as being sort of the leader of a new society. And here he's talking about who the leader of the old society is, right? Uh, you know, Whether he thinks that the preacher has should have a role in the new society is another thing. But he definitely sees the preacher as being, part and parcel of the African American project and serving a very, very important role. But he shows the sort of issues with religion and specifically with Christianity here. And then chapter 11. This is a very personal, memoristic story of the death of his firstborn son. And so both in the birth and in the death of his son, you'll see notions of double consciousness, or he'll put them into the story. And, you want to, take a look at that, right? And, it's a very sort of melodramatic, sort of classic story of birth and death of a child. It's really, really tugging at our heartstrings in a lot of ways. And then he introduces, political and historical aspects into this with the idea of double consciousness. So, how does he do it? Why does he do it? Things you could look at there. Then chapter 13, the coming of John. You can skip chapter 12, Alexander Crummell. Look at chapter 13, the coming of John. This is a short story that he writes. And this really is, again, another very melodramatic tale, literary style. And we really see, he's really playing with the notion of double consciousness here in a very sort of structured literary way. And finally, we have the chapter 14 on music, the sorrow songs, and Negro spirituals. So to be talking here, and it's really, the beginnings of, or the foundations of blues, jazz, hip hop, right? This sort of tragic sort of dimension, this double consciousness dimension that arises out of a culture that has been, living, that had to endure a terrible amount of genocidal slavery. So again, another double consciousness moment. So you could work it here in this chapter.